We are joined by Julie Kelly. She has a Substack you should all check out, Declassified with Julie Kelly on Substack.com. Julie, thanks for being here. Are you at the courthouse today for the trial of some J6 defendants, including the Proud Boys? Tell us the latest. What's going on?
Hey, guys. So I just left the D.C. federal courthouse where the first sentencing, one of 5 sentencings for members of the Proud Boys, 4 of whom were convicted of seditious conspiracy by a D.C. jury. Today, Judge Tim Kelly, Trump appointee, I think it's important to note, sentenced Joe Biggs to 17 years in prison for his convictions for seditious conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, etc. But what's more important is that Judge Kelly went along with Joe Biden's DOJ, which is requesting terrorism enhancements for various crimes related to January 6th. And what Tim Kelly did today, he added tearing down part of a metal fence to the list of federal terrorism crimes. This is what is happening in Washington, D.C. I can't believe what I've seen in this courthouse this week, and I've seen a lot already. But to codify Joe Biden's weaponization of DOJ, criminalization of political protest for someone like Joe Biggs, who didn't attack a police officer, he didn't bring a weapon in, he was with a bunch of rowdy Proud Boys who went in and he walked inside the building twice, didn't attack anyone, didn't vandalize anything inside the Capitol, but because he and others were shaking part of the metal fence outside the Capitol, Judge Kelly added the terror enhancement, which put 10 years to the base of the sentencing guidelines.
Wait, Julie, can you just, I'm sorry, how can shaking a fence be? I mean, I dealt with cases that had terrorism enhancements, and it was usually like, bringing an explosive trying to bring it onto the plane or something, right? It was for terrorism purposes. How can shaking a fence be terrorism? Like, what was the actual legal rationale there?
Well, because the people, I think, who originally created terrorism laws thought that if they put something like destruction of government property in the statute, that serious judges and serious prosecutors would recognize that means exactly what you're saying. Trying to blow up a government building, taking down government assets, causing a mass casualty event. I actually listened to an assistant U.S. attorney from the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office who was straining to compare a mass casualty event, someone shooting down an airliner, someone using a weapon of mass destruction, to what happened on January 6th and the shaking of a metal fence in order to connect the two terrorism, acts of terrorism. Again, I'm sort of speechless because I just left there. I was expecting Judge Kelly to do that, but to hear them, strain to compare a mass casualty event like 9/11, which we know judges have done, they just did it again this week, to 4 hours at the Capitol on January 6th. It's crazy.
All right. Julie, you've been covering this, and give your Twitter handle for everybody out there if they want to follow you, because you've done a better job covering these January 6th cases and the political persecution surrounding them than anybody, I think, on the planet. What are your social handles so people can follow you?
Thanks so much. So my Twitter is Julie_Kelly2. I'm at Truth Social, also Julie_Kelly. My Substack, as you said, is Declassified with Julie Kelly. I'm getting a lot of transcripts and motions, as you guys know and see. I get those and I post them so people can read for themselves what the prosecutors and judges are saying in these cases. And so that's where people can find me. And I'll be writing about not just what happened in this hearing today, but you also had a Democrat Obama judge yesterday brand a 61-year-old grandmother from Florida, a domestic terrorist, said that the terrorism enhancement was appropriate in her case. She was in the Capitol for 18 minutes, again, committed no violent crime, didn't try to blow up a building, didn't try to kill police officers. So they are, as I wrote in my book, they are using January 6th to launch a war on terror against all of us. And that's precisely what they're doing. And they're expanding it in scope and setting a very dangerous precedent for the future.
Again, you've done a fabulous job covering all of this. And I just want to make sure that everybody out there understands, they're elevating grandmas to terrorists while simultaneously lowering serious felony violent charges that are being prosecuted inside the Washington, D.C. against almost everyone else. So it's not just that they're like, if they were just aggressively prosecuting every alleged violent felon, people might say, okay, that's just a hard-edged prosecutor. They're actually tossing virtually every other serious felony charge that they can down to a misdemeanor while trying to put grandmas in prison for substantial time. Now, Julie, you've covered the Trump stuff very well. You've predicted with us for years now on this show exactly where we're headed. Can you contextualize for our audience how outlandish it is for a March 4th trial date to be given for Donald Trump relative to what the usual amount of time people have had to prepare is for these January 6th cases based on all the ones that you have covered? I think a usual timeline is 18 to 24 months. Suddenly Trump gets charged in August and is supposed to be on trial by March. There's no precedent for that, right?
There absolutely isn't. And I would direct people to my Substack. I just also purchased and posted the entire transcript from Monday's hearing. You have to read what Judge Tanya Chutkan was saying in court to justify her, what they call rocket docket, her fast track for this case, among other things, claiming that Donald Trump's attorneys, who he hadn't hired yet, should have been working on this case a year ago when the government, DOJ, announced they had impaneled a grand jury for January 6th. She also, by the way, compared January 6th to 9/11. But the reason why it's consequential, of course, and I go back to the Proud Boys case, they are making this tie between what the government, DOJ, and the judges are now calling an act of domestic terror, tying that to Donald Trump. So that is, and the reason why she wants to step ahead of, say, what's happening in southern Florida, that trial is scheduled for May. Tanya Chutkan wants to butt in and take over first and get the first federal indictment because, of course, it's in Washington, D.C. It's a no-brainer. So I think that that's part of DOJ and the judge's calculation is to get a quick hit, a quick conviction on these 4 counts. But I still think there's going to be more charges. The grand jury is still impaneled in Washington, D.C. for January 6th. This isn't over, to me, by a long shot. So I fully expect more charges from Jack Smith against Donald Trump.
Julie, which of these 4 criminal trials do you find the most legally precarious for Trump at this stage?
You mean pose like the greatest risk to him?
Yeah, in terms of prosecution. I mean, or conviction, I mean.
I'd have to go with the January 6th election case here in Washington, D.C. I mean, look, DOJ has an almost near perfect conviction record. And to your point about the trials, the average trial is about 14 months from arrest, indictment to trial. The Proud Boys trial was almost 2 years between original indictments. They kept superseding it and dragging it out, adding charges and defendants. But those men were starting to be arrested in January and February, and they didn't go to trial till this past January. So for her to suggest that 7 months, that she's giving Donald Trump some sort of break is preposterous because that just is not the historical case with January 6th trial.
Is there any way that this could be further? I mean, I've thought all along the judge that she was going to do this. Glenn and I have been talking about this, that she wasn't going to try to let them wait till after the election because we all know that the Democrats are afraid Trump might win and then he'll just make the charges go away. The process to extend it, if it doesn't go through the judge, you'd have to have an appeals court that would hear it and that they would make that determination. But is that likely? I mean, basically, do you think the J6 D.C. trial looks now like it is going to happen before the election?
I've always thought no, but seeing how Tanya Chutkan has conducted herself in these hearings, there is a possibility now that maybe they won't add charges, that they're just going to go forward with these 4 counts, obstruction, and then 3 conspiracy charges, and, go from there. There's real pitfalls to that, though. The obstruction count is now pending before the Supreme Court, and if the Supreme Court decides to take up the obstruction count and the conspiracy to obstruct, that DOJ, that Jack Smith charged Donald Trump with, if they take that up at the end of October, I think you're going to have to see some recalibration from special counsel Jack Smith. Those counts are not a sure thing. So that's why I still think that they might add counts. But if he does go to trial, let's say he does go to trial in March, you get a quick conviction, right, a month later. Then his sentencing hearing is, say, 3 months out from there. So you're in the summer of 2024. You can't appeal until a sentence is handed down. So there's no way really to appeal his conviction until you're sentenced. That's the usual way how it goes in federal courts. Now, there can be some other appeals, certainly motions that his defense team are planning to file, not the least of which is selective prosecution, and move to dismiss these counts. But it doesn't, not something Tanya Chutkan on her own is going to entertain.
Nope.
So, yes, if you're asking if it's feasible that this could go to trial and he could be sentenced and taken into custody before November 2024, with this case, yes, if they don't bring more charges.
That's the question I wanted to ask you, Julie. You've been there for people out there who aren't aware, there would be a trial. Let's pretend that the government gets exactly what they want now, basically, which is this trial starts March 4th. Let's say that it takes 2 months, which is, I don't think, crazy to think it might take 2 months. And let's say sometime in May, a jury that is not, as you have pointed out, Julie Kelly, of Donald Trump's peers. It's a 95% or whatever it is, D.C. jury that's likely to convict Trump on everything because they are dyed-in-the-wool Democrat activists, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then they come back. Let's say the conviction happens in May. To your point, they come back, and let's say it's August, and they enter in the official sentence. Have you seen everybody taken out in handcuffs at that point? I'm not familiar with what happens at the sentencing hearings. Like, would they then theoretically take Trump and try to put him in prison in August or September or something, a couple of months before an actual election with him as potentially the Republican nominee? I'm just trying to play this out in the event that it happened based on what you have seen of these Jan 6 cases so far.
They could ask the judge at that point when he is sentenced to immediately take Donald Trump into custody. They could, the DOJ and Jack Smith's office definitely could ask for that. I've seen that done. It just happened this week with the conviction of 5 pro-lifers who were convicted by a D.C. jury of violating the FACE Act. And the Clinton-appointed judge remanded them into immediate custody as they were sentenced. So yes, that could possibly happen. Again, I wouldn't put anything past Jack Smith at
this
that
is
point.
just
they could give him home confinement too. Just to point that that's also a possibility, I believe. So that would might make it
the whole thing
logistically
is
easier.
crazy to think because the Secret Service would theoretically have to accompany Trump into any custody, right? Because they're not going to
shut down. They would shut down probably part of a facility. And it sounds insane as we're talking about this, but I think they'd have to shut down a part of a facility, and they would have to do perimeter security while he was in a cell.
Well,
right? I mean, this is insane.
Secret Service. I think they have to accommodate the Secret Service agents as well. So, yes. But, I mean, we're so far past. We've so crossed the Rubicon here that anyone who thinks that that's too absurd, too outlandish, too unrealistic, take it from me. After watching these judges and line prosecutors in action, there is nothing they won't do to punish Donald Trump's supporters and ultimately get at the big prize, which is Donald Trump himself.
Julie Kelly, everybody, Declassified on Substack. Subscribe to it. Julie, as always, thank you for the work you do. We'll be talking to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.